And the End Zone continues here in Week 3, presented by TiVo. Jason Horowitz alongside Ian Eagle with you here in New York. In case you've missed any of the segments, you could always check them out on demand on your TiVo DVR via TiVocast and, of course, on CBSSports.com. But it's time to bring in Solomon Wilcots, who will be calling the game with you this weekend.
That's right.
It's Houston and Indianapolis. Solomon, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Nice to join you.
Well, Solomon, you are a dedicated partner, a dedicated friend, and it's about time that both you and I, because guys like Jason Horowitz, every week, and you get the same thing that I get, hey, what game you got? So week 1, he asked me what game you got. I say Houston, Kansas City. The reaction is, I guess there's some decent storylines there, but it's not an overwhelmingly positive reaction. Here we are now 2 weeks later. They say Indianapolis, Houston is the game. Everyone asks, what game you got? And now they're impressed with the Houston Texans. 2 weeks in, and they're impressed with the Houston Texans, Solomon.
Yeah, who would have thought it? 6 years into their run from expansion, the Houston Texans are now making headlines, going in undefeated against the Indianapolis Colts. And you and I did their last game in Week 16 of last season, where they actually beat the Indianapolis Colts for the very first time. So I don't think Houston comes into this game intimidated at all.
What do you guys have, a monopoly on the Colts-Texans game?
Yeah, that's our game. We own that game.
This is like the part of the board where you have St. James Place, the Electric Company, and Texans-Colts? Is that?
It's a guarantee. If it's Texans-Colts, it's me and Solomon. That's just the bottom line.
Well, Solomon, let's get into the Colts here and talk about the turnaround here, because Solomon, obviously a former defensive back and now a member of CBS Sports with you, as we've mentioned. But with the Indianapolis defensive secondary here, Solomon, what is the situation here? Are they, now that Andre Johnson won't play in this game, is it kind of just a relief and a segment where they could go in and say, we're going to stop the run and you're not going to beat us with the pass?
Well, I think there's no doubt you remove Andre Johnson from this game and that you have to breathe a collective sigh of relief if you're the Indianapolis Colts. You look at the numbers he's put up the first couple of weeks and then leading the league in receptions 1 year ago. This guy, physically speaking, in terms of his ability on the field, he's a young Terrell Owens, big, strong, fast. The fact that he will not be in this game, it's a tremendous advantage for the Indianapolis Colts, who's playing pretty good football right now.
You know, every week we have a segment on our broadcast. It is the wisdom of Solomon.
I've seen that.
It's sweeping the nation. People are reacting in a positive manner to the wisdom of Solomon. And last week, a big focus for Solomon was safeties and the difference makers around the NFL. And there is one guy now that's become that poster child for safeties that can take over a game. Solomon, I know you've been really impressed with how he's developed as a player, and that's Bob Sanders. What a difference maker he is right now for Indy.
Well, there's no doubt about it. On a team that has Dwight Freeney at defensive end, Robert Mathis at defensive end, Bob Sanders actually leads the team with 2.5 sacks. That's what kind of player he is. And we know on the back end he's a difference maker, patrolling that secondary. He is the intimidator that I think every defensive secondary has to have on the field. If you're going over the middle as a wide receiver against the Colts defense, you cannot help but take a peek to find out where Bob Sanders is. And in this game on Sunday against Houston, he's going to be all over the football field.
Solomon, on the other side with the Colts here, obviously it's Peyton Manning, and he's always the story, and he's the poster child for the NFL. But he took some hits last week against Tennessee. Tarek Glenn, no longer member of the Colts. He retired in the offseason. Is this and this is a much improved defensive line for the Texans. Is this an area maybe of a little bit of concern with Mario Williams going up and maybe getting in Peyton Manning's face?
I think you have to be concerned. Tony Hugo, the rookie tackle, he's done a pretty admirable job, I think, in the first couple of weeks. I think he'll be tested even more this week because Houston is a defensive line that has 3 first-round picks, not just Mario Williams. Amobe Okoye came out in this year's draft a few years ago. Travis Johnson out of Florida State. So it's a formidable defensive front. Tony Hugo and that entire offensive line for the Colts, they will be tested in this game. But keep in mind, year in and year out, Peyton Manning is one of the least sacked quarterbacks in our league because of his ability to anticipate, read defenses, and he smartly gets rid of the football.
You know, Solomon, curious about your thoughts on Indianapolis and whether or not they took umbrage during the offseason when prognosticators were talking about 07 and who's going to come out of the AFC. New England seemed to be a popular pick. San Diego was probably that next choice. And here we are. The Indianapolis Colts are coming off a championship. Peyton Manning's the best quarterback in the NFL. I never looked at Peyton as a guy that would just go win his one championship and then say, hey, whatever happens the rest of the way in my career is fine. This is a guy that wants multiple championships. Do you feel like Indianapolis is happy that they're kind of going under the radar, or do they command more respect than that they're getting right now?
I think the way they came out in Week 1 against the New Orleans Saints, there's no doubt they command the respect. There's no doubt in my mind, though, that Tony Dungy is using this to their advantage, allowing his team to say, you still have a lot to prove to a lot of people, and really allowing this to work for him to the point where his team doesn't come in feeling like they're better than everyone else. Yeah, they have a lot to prove to a lot of people simply because this is a defense that's never been dominant in terms of stopping the run. And I think people look at them as having maybe a soft underbelly because teams do believe that if you play the coach, you can run the football on them. I think in the second season last year, in the postseason, we found out that that's not always true.
And Amon Green, Ron Dane, that would be the two guys that the Texans would have to rely on to do that, especially with Andre Johnson not in this game to throw to. Solomon, thank you very much for all the knowledge. Have a safe flight down to Houston, where Ian will be waiting with you for you with the sign that says Wilcots.
I'll be there.
Hey, you know what? It's really very easy for me. Ian does all the heavy lifting. Anytime we have the voice of Ian Eagle, then we're always cooking with game.
You know, it's funny, Solomon. We had Randy Cross on before, and he said tackle Ian low. I say you tackle him high. What do you say as the former defensive back?
I say if you go any lower, you end up on the ground.
There's the insight we've been waiting for. Jason, you could take some notes on how to be a good partner from Solomon Wilcots.
I will not throw you under the bus anymore. I appreciate that.
Solomon, thanks. You're the best, man.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, Solomon Wilcots, and of course you can see him with Ian this weekend on CBS. Houston and Indy 2-0. That's it for this segment of the End Zone. Stick around. One more to go. It's always on demand here on CBSSports.com. You can rewatch any story from this week or throughout the year on your TiVo DVR via TiVo Cast. You can watch the End Zone in your living room.